Fly like an eagle. Minister parks in a no parking zone, leaves a message on his windshield, says, "Dear officer, I've gone around the block 10 times, couldn't find a space. I really need to get to my appointment. I'm afraid of missing my appointment." And then in big letters, a quote from the Bible that says, "Please forgive our trespasses." Comes back after his appointment to find a ticket on the windshield and a note left for him, which says, "Dear sir, I've been driving around this block 10 years. And if I don't write you a ticket, I'll lose my job. Do not lead us into temptation." Today I want to talk to you about flying like an eagle. Let us do our receptivity prayer. I am open to the evolution of my soul. My mind is alert. My heart is receptive. My next step is here and now. And so it is. Thank you. Now, I will talk to you about flying like an eagle. You know, there are times in our lives where we feel confronted by things, people not liking us, people talking bad behind our backs, situations that feel hopeless. And we can easily fall into the trap of thinking that's the way it is. Things aren't going to get any better. Might as well just learn to deal with it. This is the way it is. Well, I'm here to tell you today that no, it isn't. That what's really possible is for us to rise. That in fact, that's what we're here for. We are here to rise, to continually rise to the highest place we can find, to find that bigger perspective that is available to all of us at all times, to show us what it is that is our next step to do. I call this talk Fly Like an Eagle because an eagle has some incredibly interesting characteristics. When it is flying around, if a crow or crows come to bother it because somehow they have gone into their territory, the eagle will not turn around to fight them. Simply spirals up until the crows have to fall off because they can't get that high. Our tendency is to actually take on the crows in our lives and to think what we need to do is battle them as opposed to rise above them. The other thing is a lot of times I hear people say stuff like, "Well, I'm a big picture person. I let others worry about the details." The beauty of the eagle is even at 1,000 feet, it can spot the fish that is dinner and dives down and gets it. That's what's really possible, and that's what's happened to me in my life. As I have noticed for myself, as I rise, my next step becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. Maybe for yourself, you have noticed that it is when you are most centered, it becomes the easiest to see what is clearly your next step to do. Not when you're in the midst of being upset, not when you're distracted by the crows and the chickens who want to tell you how to stay on the ground and how you got to do things step by step, but when we rise and continually rise, that is when the miracles occur, and all of a sudden what others call reality seems to fall away, and what actually occurs is something miraculous. My wife made a choice, a decision that she, after 20 years on a thyroid medication, was going to give it up. The doctor, being a crow, said, "No way. You can't do that. You will be on this medication the rest of your days. It would have been very easy for my wife to go, well, that's what the doctor says, so I guess that's the way it's going to be. And go along with that. But instead, she rose. And she comes to me and says, I know I can do this. I know I can do this. And she went out and she looked up diets. She was working with Matt over there on diets and kept rising and kept working it and kept working it. She's been off her medication now for 8 months. And when she went back to the doctors, they were like, this is impossible. Because that's what can happen when we rise. That's what happens every time somebody rises. They experience what others think of as impossible. There was a time when scientifically it was proven that people could not run faster than a 4-minute mile. Except there were a couple of folks who said, I don't believe that. And they rose. And they kept at it until all of a sudden running a 4-minute mile was possible. And the funniest part about that is once the first person did it, several did it shortly thereafter. Because now it was in the field as possible. But somebody has to go first. Somebody has to be in your realm of influence, has to be the one who first says, no, there is nothing impossible here, and I will rise to see what my step is to what is impossible. Now, many of you know I don't do a lot of talk out of the Bible. But for this particular talk, there was a story that seemed particularly appropriate, and that is the one of David and Goliath. Here's this teenager who is told that it's his job to go out and meet not just a giant, but the best of the best warrior of the giants. And that it was for him to defeat this man, this giant. Now, I can imagine that he was probably scared, probably maybe had some doubts, but he rose. He rose with the sense of the divine within him. He rose to a place of knowing that it was his to do. He rose to a place where he defeated that giant. Now, there are those who say, well, I don't even think that story's real. I don't think it ever really even happened. Well, I don't think it matters. I think what matters is the point of the story, because all of us have our giants to defeat. All of us have come across some opposition in life that feels too large, that feels beyond our natural ability and gifts. Whether it be a loss, whether it be a disease, whether it be a dream coming true, there's always something in our lives that feels like a giant. And if we rely upon the natural, if we rely upon the crows around us to tell us what is possible, the odds of us defeating that giant aren't really very good. It is only when we are willing to rise to a greater height, rise to something beyond what we feel in the ordinary, rise in the knowing, like Dr. Holmes tells us, in that calm assurance that of course there is a power for good in the universe and we can use it. Dr. Holmes being our founder, for those who are unsure of that. We have a quote up on the wall out there that says, to abandon the truth in our hour of need is to not understand the truth. And anyone who is flying around with crows has abandoned that truth, has abandoned themselves into the natural reality, possibility, ways of seeing life that don't allow you to rise higher. Be an eagle, continually spiraling up. Be the one who stays with the open heart, who stays with the possibility that anything is possible. that we have the ability of miracles within our grasp. All you got to do is watch a sunset and recognize that the power that made that sunset is in every cell of your body. To know that we can rise to something far greater than we can see. It is for us to recognize this rising, this power within us, this way of being that we talk about in our teaching all the time. A friend asked me the other day, why am I the only one who always has to rise when those around me don't? And my answer is because you're the one who wants to heal. You're the one who wants to attain that sense of greatness. You're the one who wants that dream to come true. The crows around you will rise or not. Be an eagle. Don't look around at all the crows and go, well, I just want to be one of them and let them be the eagle. No. Be the eagle. Be the one who rises because that's where the gifts are. That's where the satisfaction is. That's where the health and well-being is. The crows don't get to have that. They don't get to have that same sense of the divine that an eagle gets by soaring so high and so far. It is the eagle that gets to fly high, that gets to see what is truly possible out in the world. I heard a story about a young couple who had been saving for 6 years to buy a home. And then the day of closing, as the wife is sitting there waiting for her husband to show up to sign the papers, they found the home of their dreams. It was the perfect home. He had a great job. He calls her at the office where they're about to sign the papers to say he just got fired. Turned out his boss was jealous of him, petty. And just as they were about to have their dream, it was snatched away. It would have been a really easy time for them to feel discouraged, to fall down in the muck, the crows and the chickens, to be there. But they said, no, we can rise with this. And so the man went on to job hunt. The man went on to decided to really dive into the teachings he believed in and started volunteering at the church. Him and his wife stood tall in their knowing that something about this is even greater than they can realize. This went on for 6 months before he got a phone call from the company that had let him go, saying they had let go his boss. And would he please come back? And they would pay him for the entire 6 months he was gone, fill in his all the days benefits and all of that. And the home they still wanted was still on the market. And they have now raised their family in that home. That is flying like an eagle. That is not falling down to the discouragement of others. That's rising when the time calls to rise. That is remembering the truth in their hour of need. That's what's possible when we do this stuff. When we confront the dramas, when we confront the crows because we want to feel right, which, I do sometimes. We all do sometimes, right? It feels good to be right. Am I wrong about that?
You're right.
But there is a greater divinity, there is a greater way of being in the world for us to have, which sometimes calls for us to letting things slide, not getting into the strife, not confronting, not having that, winning that argument, but letting it go. Now, I'm not talking about letting go of your values, because there are certainly times for us to make a stand for what it is we believe in. But I think you all recognize that many of the arguments we have, particularly with those closest to us, are over things that we could have let slide. And that's the piece I'm talking about there, where we rise up, where we circle up, where we keep going higher and going, no, this isn't for me to confront the crow on. This is for me to rise up and see the bigger picture. That bigger picture that actually will show me the next step that needs doing. That bigger picture. When we rise, that's where the miracles occur, that bigger picture, where there is more to be seen than meets the eye, where all of a sudden we see something we never saw before. It is that rising that allows us to see newness. It is that rising that allows for improvisation. Things to come up that never came up before. I love milestones. I love newness. I love the fact that there's times where we can experience something new in life that has never happened before. And when that occurs, we're different. It's really, have you ever tried going back once you recognize that you have this power within you, and then you find yourself feeling like a victim? You got to kind of laugh at yourself, right? Because there's part of you that even when you're feeling like a victim, knows. Because you've already seen it. Your eyes have already been opened. It's really impossible. The one thing I noticed that is impossible is to close your eyes to something that they've already been open to. So I challenge you to be awakened. Awakened from the dream that anything is impossible. Awaken from the dream that there is less of a life for you than the one you dream of. That if you have it within you, you have the resources to have it come out. You have the resources to have it grow into something. Out of the chaos, out of the struggle, out of the heartache comes new visions, comes newness, comes a new life that you get to have. These giants that come into your life, these giants that look like they're there to oppose you, have been sent to support you in rising. The reason we have giants in our life is not to oppose us. They are to lead us to our greater good. They are to lead us to what is in our destiny. That's what I love about the story of David and Goliath, how it led him to his destiny. You think he would have got to have been king of Israel if he didn't have a chance, this teenager, to defeat this Goliath, this giant that was in his path? This is the greatness that is in each of us when we are confronted by a giant. This is our moment to rise. This is our opportunity to become who we have come here to be, just for having a giant in our path. Thank those giants. They're there for a reason. They're there to help you rise. They're there to help you become the greatness you have come here to be. I recently heard the story, or read about the story, of a man named Ira Glass, who has a show on NPR called This American Life, which has been one of the most successful shows on NPR for over 20 years. Turns out he had this dream of having this show in his heart at a very young age, but had absolutely no talent for it. At 19, he interned at NPR, and one of his first opportunities to put together a show turned out so bad that the producer said, "You are never going to be good enough to be on the radio. You really ought to go do something else." His parents said, "You really have no talent at this. You really should go do something else." But this was his dream. And the interesting part as I was reading his story was how he never argued with them. He never argued once. He just kept at it. He just kept rising. It took 8 years before he put together a show that the producer said was okay. Maybe almost good enough to be on the air. 8 years to get to okay. He kept at it another 8 years. 16 years of going after a dream that no one around him believed he could accomplish. But it was in his heart. It was his giant. And then went on to have one of the most successful shows NPR has ever had, still on the air for 23 years. So don't think there's a time limit. Don't think there's something going on in your life that isn't meant to be. If it's in your heart, you have it. You have what's meant to be to bring it forth. It just needs to be large enough. It needs to be a giant. No one knows this better than Gandhi, who said, "I am going to remove the British from India without firing a single shot." People thought he was crazy. It took 34 years. He was in jail 13 times, beaten, starved, never raised a hand to anybody, never spoke a discouraging word. Just said, "This is mine to do. Do it with me." And sure enough, the British left India 34 years later, after he began. Talk about having something within you and continually having to rise over and over and over. This little man simply had something within his heart to bring forth. This is what's possible for each of us. We all have this within our hearts. We all have a way of being we want to bring to the world. All we have to do is keep rising. I stand before you today not wanting to just inspire, but to awaken you to that which is already in you, to that which is ready to rise, to that which wants to come forth, to that destiny that is yours. It is yours to have because you're the one that brings it forth. Why do we always have to be the ones to rise? Because we're the ones that want to heal. Thank those giants for being in your life. Don't complain about them. They are there for the express purpose of supporting you in rising you to a place you have never known before, rising to a place that will allow for miracles, miraculousness, and beauty. This is what's possible when you rise. I love you. Thank you. All right, take out what you're going to give and hold it in your hand. Unfold it. You know how this goes. We unfold it. We hold it because this is power of God. This is the way we move forth the energy and the power of the universe so that it comes back multiplied abundantly. This is how we do it. So you don't fold it up, you don't crumple it up, you don't slide it quickly into the basket. This is your prayer being placed. And let's say our affirmation together. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am. And so it is.